Hello and welcome to the Scratch tutorial video on designing ecosystem stories. Now you can start this project off by going to Scratch Junior and you're going to start a new project. So we'll press home and we're going to press a new project. Now the goal for today is to design a story about what's happening in your backyard. So what's happening in a field or in the forest, somewhere that's close to you, something that's happening in a natural ecosystem, right? Where biotic or living things like plants, rabbits, squirrels are interacting with other living things. So for example, perhaps a squirrel eating a pine cone, that would be a biotic thing, or a living thing interacting with another living thing. Or biotic things interacting with abiotic things. An abiotic thing is a non-living thing. So perhaps a rock or a cloud or dirt. So we're going to be capturing that on Scratch today. So what you can do first is hold your finger on the cat just to get rid of the cat sprite. We can press the red X. And now we're going to choose a background and two characters for our story. So I'm going to start with backgrounds. You can press the panorama picture in the middle. And I'm going to scroll through, and I want to choose something that's pretty similar to either my backyard or a natural place near my home. So I'm going to choose the forest with a river because I live near a forest and a field and a river. So I'm going to click on that. Now, what I'd like you to do is think about um, um, natural things that you've seen before. So animals that you might have seen, plants, living things, and how they interacted with other living things, biotic things, or non-living things. And I want you to think about how you can tell a story on Scratch, how you can represent that on Scratch Junior. Okay? So I'm thinking of a time that I saw an animal hiding behind a tree to get away from a predator. So I'm going to press plus. Before you choose your characters, I recommend sitting down with a piece of paper and really writing out what kind of story you want to tell. I just shared mine with you. I'm going to choose an animal that's hiding behind a tree. However, you can choose any story you'd like about the natural world. You could choose an animal finding a food source. You can decide to create a story about water, an abiotic thing that makes a tree, a biotic thing grow. So I'm going to press my plus button, and I'm going to scroll through my characters. Now I want to choose a living thing that I've seen in my area. So I'm going to choose the rabbit. Great. I'm going to move my rabbit to the side of the screen. And then I'm going to choose one more character, either a biotic thing, a living thing, or an abiotic, a non-living thing. So I'm going to choose a tree because I've seen rabbits using trees to shelter behind before. So I'm going to move the tree over here. And I'm going to program the rabbit here. I'm just going to show you with my finger first. I'm going to program the rabbit to get a little bit smaller because it's quite a large rabbit. It's half the size of the tree. So I'm going to program my rabbit to run over to the tree and then hide behind the tree. Okay. So there are a couple things I want to think about. One, I need a block that tells the rabbit to go back to the beginning when it's done hiding behind the tree because I want many people to see my story many times. I don't want it to be, just once. And I also need to figure out a way for my rabbit to move a set amount of steps and then go up a set amount of steps. So I'm going to start with the yellow tab. I'm going to choose a when green flag is pressed. Move it over here. That's what's going to start our code. And then I'm going to work on the movement part. I'm going to move right a few steps, and I'm going to move up a few steps. I'm going to guess and say it's about 5 steps. But you can tinker around with this and figure out whatever works for you. So I'm going to press green flag. And that's about right. Now, another thing that I'm noticing is my rabbit's quite big. So I'm actually going to go to purple, to looks, and I'm going to make my rabbit smaller, let's say by 4 every time the code starts. Green flag. Great. Now my rabbit is about a good size for my tree. It's not too big. And then the next thing I'm going to do, if it's hiding behind the tree, I want it to actually disappear when it gets behind the tree. And then I want it to reappear at the beginning of the code. So I'm actually going to make it smaller and then reappear. So that way my rabbit is not shrinking at the beginning. So great. So I'm actually going to pull my hide block off. And the next thing I'm going to work on is to make sure that the rabbit always starts in the same place and gets to the tree exactly in the right spot. So I'm going to press green flag again just to make sure it gets to the right spot. Now, it didn't quite get to the right spot that time, so I'm going to move it a little bit to the right. Press green flag. That looks a little bit better. So next, I'm going to drag it back. See, it's about there. And I'm going to grab a go back to the beginning when you are done with your code. That way we can press green flag as many times as we want, and we can always see our code in action. Let's press green flag to make sure that works. Great. Is pull the hide block in, press green flag. Whoop, right here. Press green flag one last time. There we go. Now, the last thing that we need to do is to make sure that the rabbit actually hides when it gets to its beginning location, or at least that there's some lag time, right? So that it doesn't look like the rabbit is teleporting from here over to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to our orange tab, our control block, and I'm just going to tell it to wait 10 seconds before it returns back. So I'm going to press green flag. There we go. Great. So, I did a project about a rabbit and a tree, but feel free to do a project about any two things that you've observed in your home ecosystem, whether that's two living things that are interacting, or a living thing and a non-living thing.